All right, it's 6 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. We will go ahead and bring this meeting to order tonight. This meeting is being held in the council chambers, which are open for public attendance and participation. The meeting will also be live streamed for public viewing, but not participation at the link identified in the agenda. Emailed comments sent and received by the city clerk at least 24 hours before the meeting were distributed to the city council prior to the meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Harris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Baumgarten.
Here.
Councilmember Kirchner.
Here.
Councilmember Pasquale.
Here.
All right, if everyone can stand, please. We're going to have an invocation and words of inspiration by Ron Fortenberry, the Yuba City PD chaplain, followed by Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Pasquale.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I invite you to join me in prayer. Great and mighty God, thank you for this night. Thank you that you shower us with benefits of freedom, prosperity, and peace. I ask that tonight you would give this council wisdom as they take a look at the budget and wrestle with the ideas that they need to take care of business. I pray that you would bless city staff as they're involved in the process. I ask God that you would continue to bless our city with peace. Bless this night. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, very good. Thank you all. See, the resolution for item 5 has been revised and distributed to council. We have it all right here. And then we'll move on to item number 1 for appearance of interested citizens. You are welcome and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on the action items appearing on the consent calendar or business items on the agenda when they are called. Public comment on the other items within the scope of the city's jurisdiction, including items not listed on the agenda, will be considered at this time. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The members of the public submitting written requests at least 24 hours prior to the meeting will be allotted 5 minutes to comment per speaker. Repetitive comments may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select representatives to express the opinions of the group. And do we have any comments from the public at all? You have 3 minutes, if so. You guys sure? All right, we'll move on. To consent calendar, all matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time that council votes on the motion unless members of the city council request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual action. Do we have any comments from the public on consent calendar items 2 through 5? Seeing none, we need a motion.
Through the mayor,
Sir?
move to approve consent items 2 through 5.
And that would include revised resolution on number 5. All right.
Second.
First and a second to approve consent calendar items 2 through 5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to business items, which is the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 operating budget and capital improvement project budget, presented by Spencer Morrison's Finance Director, Deanna Pope, Accounting Manager, Amarjeet Kaur, Administrative Analyst 2, and Ben Moody, who's our Public Works Director. I feel like I'm at a congressional hearing or something right now. Any comments in the public for this? I do want to comment that those members of the public that are here, I appreciate you being here. This is quite important item today, although it is, of course, it's available for viewing live and later on. But those of you who took the time to be here, it's much appreciated. So, it's all yours, sir.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight we are presenting you with a review of the fiscal year 24-25 operating budget for the general fund and a summary of the enterprise funds. Joining me is Deanna Pope, Accounting Manager, and Amarjeet Kaur, and Analyst 2, and both are responsible for coordinating, stewarding, and building this budget. At the end of the general fund section, I will outline some recommendations from the ad hoc committee and take your questions about the fund. After my presentation, I will turn the mic over to Ben Moody for CIP. So this slide shows where the city's general fund dollars go. Two of the city council's priorities are public safety and infrastructure maintenance. That is where a little less than 3/4 of the city's general fund dollars are spent by department. The percentages in this slide change only slightly from year to year, which is what you would expect since these are the areas that continue to be the long-term priorities of the city. So we are expecting a nearly $2.7 million surplus once we close the books on fiscal year 23-24. However, this isn't an operating surplus per se because it's rather unused reserves that are transferred back into the general fund. If you'll recall, we used $4.1 million of reserves to close the budget or to balance the budget in 2023. Any surplus funds will be used to adjust the Healthy Cities Reserve, with the remainder returning to unallocated general fund balance to be programmed by the council. And I'll have an item a little later to talk about some options there given this budget. So as you know, rising costs of goods do persist. These are just a list of some of the items that we have seen big changes in over the last few years and that are continuing to create challenges for staff. And in this slide, I track some of those. So using fiscal year 14-15 as my index, this is about how much the costs have increased over the last several years, over the last 10 years. Just using some 4 data points in time. So I've got 15-16, which is the following year, but then 18-19 represents before, kind of pre-pandemic. 21-22 represents post-pandemic and supply chain issues. And then, of course, the coming fiscal year, you can see that some of our costs that we have control of are going up, but some of the costs that we do not have control of are going up as well. Look at that insurance figure for property and liability, about 431% since fiscal year 14-15. This is the budget process. Departments identify needs to best serve the community and provide current year-end projections and communicate budget needs in the coming year, providing guidance on the direction to implement council's direction on community priorities. Finance works mostly behind the scenes to provide information to the department, city manager, and city council, gather projections and proposed budgets for every division, calculate, evaluate, and verify available funds, and assemble everything gathered into a usable document. The Budget Ad Hoc Committee reviews the city finances and practices and helps guide staff's recommendations to city council from a policymaker's perspective. And then, of course, the city manager is charged with implementing council's vision and ensuring tax and ratepayer dollars support the community in the manner for which they were intended. So at this time, I will invite a comment from the Budget Ad Hoc Committee if you wish. It's up to you. Council did choose to use a Budget Ad Hoc Committee again. This is the maybe 5th year. And the committee members were selected by the mayor and our council members, the mayor, Harris, and Pasquale. Did you want to make any comments, either of you gentlemen?
Not a whole lot at this point. It's pretty early in the game, other than I appreciate the process. I think it's good to have, like you were saying, a perspective on the budget process from a policymaker's perspective. Due to previous budgets, we've wrung the rag so dry that we didn't leave us with a whole lot of options, and so we had to come down to some choices we had to make. And I think we did a good job of doing that. But I do appreciate staff and the department heads when they came into the meetings. Were realistic. The typical, the old school tactic would be ask for the moon and hope for something lower. But they were realistic, and we had some good, frank conversations. We had to make some tough decisions because everything was definitely articulated well in the need, but we only have so much to go around. So I do appreciate staff and everybody who came in and spoke with us, and it was I think a very effective process. So, sir.
Yeah, the process was spot on, bringing everyone to the table to be in front of the mayor and myself and giving their spiel, what they thought they needed. There was a lot of wants, but they knew that there was going to be what was needed, and I appreciate that. Everybody did really, really fine. They were well prepared, which I appreciated, and very good process. I had been in a process line by line before with the colleges, so I was familiar with it, and I liked the process, so it worked real well.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Yeah, the committee met with each department to hear budget needs and deliberated over a long final day, and the recommendations are following. And I would like to add to, or just agree that the departments presented the ad hoc committee with a pretty thin budget. There not a lot of asks. The items that were in there that were more wants than needs, the departments trimmed those out themselves. And so kudos to the whole team for getting together on this. You can see that the general fund recommendations are for materials, supplies, and services are about 1.03 million, and the ad hoc rejected about 334,000. Recommendation, the department recommendation was, and the ad hoc recommendation is about 173,000 of personnel requests. I'll show you at the end, there's not very many new positions in that. There are some new positions, but it's really filling a strong need. Most of that is just trying to move people and positions around into the right spaces to best help the department. And then the personnel requests rejected were 418,000. The ad hoc committee said yes to about $37,000 in new capital assets, capital acquisitions, and no to 12,000 in capital acquisitions. That was the general fund. The water fund, the recommendations were 1.6 million into material supplies and service, 78,000 in personnel requests, and 70,000 in capital acquisitions. And the wastewater fund, $1 million in material supplies and services. The recommendation was to reject about 19,000 and recommend 69,000 in personnel requests. And I'm going to get into the details later, or we're going to show you later. But a whole bunch of those were items that you don't have a ton of control over, like gas and electric increases. There's a lot of stuff that's more difficult to control. Technology fund. Can you hear us okay? All right. Technology fund, speaking of, 249,000 in capital acquisitions, and then vehicle replacement fund, 527,000 in capital acquisitions. And again, we'll go over those details a little bit later. As mentioned in an earlier slide, transfers of one-time reserves are balancing this budget. Reserves will come from budget stabilization, and again, this is a discussion point a little bit later in the presentation, but we're anticipating budget stabilization reserve will close the gap of about 5.5 million. So you do see, starting with the 23-24 adopted budget, with the revenues, the decreases are going to probably be right around 3.8 million. But remember that we did move 6.6 million into revenues and out of the ARPA funding. So ARPA had its own fund, and so we decided the council's direction was to turn those ARPA dollars into budget stabilization reserves, and so that's why the revenue was so much higher last year. So it'll be about 3.8 million less this year, and then we've got we'll be using reserves to close the gap, and total revenues of just under 62 million. And then expenditures, we started out with 23-24, we had 57.4 million. we're proposing increases or increases are just happening of almost 4.4 million to give us a balanced budget of just under 62 million. So the city does have reserves and does have discretionary funds. So budget stabilization reserve is just one of them here at the bottom. So I just mentioned that. But you also have a Healthy Cities Reserve, which is by policy, council usually directs me, the finance director, to take any surpluses and first make that Healthy Cities Reserve 15% of the next fiscal year's proposed budget, expenditure budget. And then you have some other discretionary funds. Vehicle replacement is projected to, at the end of fiscal year 23-24, to be just over 9 million. Pension stabilization fund, which is our monies that this council set aside to be assets that offset the liability of unfunded pension. We have some development impact fee loans that are out there where the general fund loaned money to the impact fee fund to further fund some of the underfunded categories. We have general fund CIP, which is going to be around 1.4 in unallocated funds this year. And then, like I said, the budget stabilization reserve. So the Healthy Cities Reserve is kept recalculated at the adoption of each budget for the following year. 15% is a minimum. And if we were ever to use these reserves, which we'll be discussing later in this presentation, council should expect a plan to build them back to their proper levels. Across the state of California, 15% is considered to be a very minimal number. But as you can see, these are not our only reserves. So we have other reserves as well. If we are not going to add to the Healthy City Reserves in 24-25, then the reserves at this current level that they are now that you see on the slide will fall to about 13% of our general fund budget that we're proposing. And you could direct me to transfer monies from the general fund CIP to make that at 1.3 million that we need to get up to the 15%. You could direct me to do that, and that'll be a decision point later. And then, of course, council retains discretion to redirect and spend general funds no matter where they are and what they've been designated to do or what they've been proposed to do. So that's why I listed these other balances. So while you have discretion over all these other funds, the funds have a purpose and the opportunity costs must be considered. So if you've got funds right now, you have about 9 million set aside to replace vehicles as they become inoperable or just age out. If you were to utilize some of those reserves to help close a future budget gap, then that's just fewer vehicles you're going to be able to replace. So that's the opportunity cost. And so that's something that you have always considered and that you would have to consider in the future. I do want to further acknowledge your city's department heads for submitting reasonable and responsible budget projections and proposals that fell in line with the city's current financial positions. Like I said, when they handed the ad hoc committee and the ad hoc committee passed this proposed budget on to the council at large, they were pretty lean, and the asks were very, very reasonable. So the team did a really, really nice job this year. So with that, let's take a look at the general fund. So in this slide, you can see that the projected 23-24 general fund is 62.4 million, and that does include that 6.6 million of ARPA funding that we moved into the general fund. So kind of inflates that a little bit. And then on the slide, the far right bar is the 61.8 million that we discussed earlier. This does show the general fund revenues over time, the last 10 years. of actual historical results and the 23-24 projected and the 24-25 proposed budgets. These figures include transfers from other funds. And then about 23 million of the 24 projected revenues are public safety generated, just for your information. In 23-24 and in 24-25, that number increases to about 2.5 million. So the largest revenue changes for 24-25 as they differ from the 23-24. Sales tax is expected to increase just a very small amount over what we budgeted in 23-24. It's been pretty flat for a while. It grew tremendously during COVID. We went from just probably under 16 million to over 18 million, or right around 18 million. And so it's just, from that point, it's just leveled off. From about 2021, it's leveled off, and might see some slight declines depending how the next 2 quarters come in. Property tax remains strong, and to further that good news, you know, the sales prices are up, so that helps for every house that does sell. And then we also are building a lot of new rooftops right now, so that's going to help in the near future. Franchise fees are expected to increase slightly, and we did again have that one-time general fund transfer to the general fund of 6.6 million, and then all other miscellaneous items combined resulted in an increase of revenues about 356,000. So sales tax, it's been pretty, like I said, pretty slow a couple of years, especially when we were seeing double-digit increases during the COVID time, 2020, 2021. So we're just kind of teetering along. It's at a nice level. It's good. It can pay for a lot of general fund good services and salaries, but we're outpacing it. The general fund expenses are increasing much higher, and so we would like that to not be so flat. These are the most recent 4 quarters, and they've already been analyzed for anything that was put in the wrong account. These are vetted numbers, and when we look at the future, there is some optimism, but we're talking pretty small increases statewide over the future. And right now, what I'm expecting to see is the first 2 quarters for the calendar year come in, so those are the quarters we're in, last quarter and the quarter we're in now. I think fuel price increases are going to buoy these numbers a little bit, so increase our sales tax a little bit. So that's given me some optimism. And I'm going to pass the microphone over to Deanna's right.
No, thank you. So the next few slides is going to address the general fund expenditures. This slide is actual results for 10 years, along with the 24 projected and the 25 proposed. It's broken down for each year into categories of salaries and benefits and MS&S. Of the proposed general fund budget, 62% is for police and fire services. Add in the public works, and it becomes 74% of the general fund. The largest expenditure changes. This is a list of the largest general fund expenditure changes from the fiscal year 23-24 budget to the fiscal year 24-25 budget. There's roughly 2.6 million in salaries and benefit increases, reflects the cost from new labor agreements and increasing costs of staff, existing positions, and additional positions requested to meet the demands of the city's priorities going into the next fiscal year. Fiscal year 24-25 changes in payroll includes 173,000 in personnel requests, including records OT of 5,000, safer grant shortfall of 52,000, reducing fire OT of 130,000, public works development services operational changes of 223,000. City manager changing a management analyst to a 1-2, reducing it by 30,000. Finance director succession transition one-time of 53,000. What was rejected was an additional CSO of 103,000. Staff is recommending ongoing MS&S increases of $1.2 million. This includes for safety, various equipment, K-9 costs, utility costs, building maintenance, physicals, and PPE of about $348,000. Non-safety includes gas and electric, equipment, maintenance and parts, uniform software, supplies, and elections. Rejected were operational costs that can be absorbed in the existing budget and a priority dispatch software. Liability and property insurance both have continued to increase each year due mostly to national weather, fire, and political events. The vehicle replacement fund balance will cover the most immediate needs, so no general fund contribution this coming fiscal year. That's why we're seeing a reduction of $450,000. Animal services increases is based on the city's share of the recently approved budget. There will be a revenue offset from Sutter County and Live Oak around 22%. PG&E rates continue to climb and staff continue to explore alternatives. And I'm passing it back.
So as we look at pension, the story has been unchanged for many years, since about 2013. So we'll see. I'm going to show you some graphs that are a little bit different, or a little bit different than last year, but they move around so much. That's going to be part of what I show you. This slide represents costs for PERS retirements. That's a percentage of every dollar of payroll. Safety is in red and miscellaneous is in blue. This is a blended composite rate of all the tiers, including unfunded actuarial liability payments, and is based on CalPERS payroll cost estimates. So every year CalPERS sends up actuarial reports for all the different tiers of pension, and they estimate in those, I think they're at 3% increase per year, which sometimes is too high for us, sometimes too low, but that's their estimate. Most of the time it's too high. These projected rates are based on the actuarial reports. This most recent year was based on the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. So those are the reports that we received just this last summer. And the assumption changes CalPERS has made in the past few years, which are increasing our UAL contributions at an alarming rate sometimes, as we're at the peak of the impacts of the changes for miscellaneous plans, but we must anticipate next ones. So we prepay the UAL, the unfunded actuarial liabilities, so we can receive an interest rate discount from CalPERS rather than paying 1/12 each month. So we just make one lump sum payment for all of our unfunded actuarial liability payments for the whole year, and it saves us 6.8% interest on those funding. So they charge you interest if you pay it monthly. Finance converts that UAL payment, or at least we have in the past, to a percentage of payroll for analytical purposes, since we know what our total estimated payroll dollars are for each of the PERS contact tiers, and that's how we develop the composite rate for comparison purposes. So the PERS projections change for costs, change each time CalPERS updates any assumptions that they use for their actuarial analysis, whether or not they hit their projected investment income target or exceed it, and when they provide CalPERS employers with new actuarial reports. So finance projections are only really as good as the information we have available from CalPERS at any specific point in time. So I included this just so you can see how divergent the cost graph is from year to year. So here are the last four fiscal years, and these numbers impact how we put cost in the budget. So last year they were coming on the heels. CalPERS investments were coming on the heels of very, very good investment returns, and so that reduced our cost in the actuarial reports, and so we use those costs to show you the cost of our salaries and benefits. But then 1 year later, 2022, the investment did terrible, and so they were minus like 13%, and so instead of being, I think in the 2021, the numbers we were using, they were plus 21% in their investment earnings, and and then 2022, they're minus 13, I think, and then this coming year, I think they might be like a plus 4, but still below the 6.8 that we're trying to hit. And so this just shows how much it can change. We use it for budgeting, but I don't know that we can put a lot of stock into it as a trend and say, this is where we're heading. It's where we are, and it's what it looks like today. So I expect that it'll be in between these two in the next coming years. Hopefully we'll get some more of those 2021 type savings, but that remains to be seen.
That's okay. So the next few slides, we're going to address the enterprise fund budgets. This slide shows flat revenues as usage remains about the same as last year while the expenses continue to increase. The proposed operating revenue is forecasted to decrease by 1.2% compared to expenditure increases of 5.5%. Increasing expenses are contributing to the declining debt coverage ratio, though we are projecting the ratio to remain at or slightly above the 1.2 required in the bond debt covenants. The available water fund cash reserves is declining as operating expenditures outpace revenues. Declining net revenue has put more pressure on debt coverage. You will see details of the CIP for water in the next presentation. Wastewater. The fiscal year 24-25 wastewater fund revenue budget is showing slightly decreasing revenues, increasing expenses, and a declining debt service ratio. Forecasting relatively flat revenues will not keep us with expenses that continue to increase steadily. Like water, increasing expenses are contributing to the declining debt coverage ratio, though we are projecting the ratio to remain above the 1.2 required in the bond debt covenants at 1.45. This is a similar slide as what you saw for water, but shows a large spike in CIP for the wastewater plant improvements and increase in cash due to bonds proceeds. And the next slides, the next ones Amarjeet will speak on.
So we were presented by the departments with the several requests with regards to the capital acquisition. Here are the general fund. We were proposed the K9 for PD for $25,000 due to the retirement and a utility trailer for the park maintenance. This is for the vehicle replacement fund, and we received for general fund $388,000, and out of that, the replacement cost for general fund for the existing is $151,000, and new for general fund is $237,000. And then among that vehicle replacement, we have $70,000 replacement for the water, which is the enterprise fund.
And let's real quick just address the scored out language right there. That is the vehicle for the CSO that was rejected. So we inadvertently left it in, and it doesn't belong. It doesn't belong there. So someday when we do hire a CSO, just know it'll come with a $70,000-ish vehicle. Thank you.
Next, we have the summary of the equipment that is requested by the IT, our technology department. These items are purchased directly from the technology replacement fund, which relies on the transfer from all divisions. Okay. These are the utility capital acquisition items requested through the enterprise fund. These both requests are from our laboratory, and one is the replacement for the water purification system and a replacement for a incubator. All right, next we have our personnel requests from the departments. We have a project coordinator, which will provide the relief to the increased project capacity for the engineering team. And we have an electrical technician 2, which will be a journey level position providing succession planning to the small team. It is funded 50% through the general fund and 50% through the enterprise fund. We have one mechanic 1, 2, which will be a journey level position providing succession planning to the small team as well.
So I want to present you with some recommendations, and then the very next slide after that, I promise, invites your questions and comments. Okay. So some of the things that we've done in the past and that I would like to keep recommending to the council is to continue to make additional discretionary payments to help pay down unfunded actuarial liability. Like last year, I'm recommending doing this straight out of the Pension Stabilization Fund, which is a fund separate. It's general fund dollars, but it's held separately than the general fund. It's in its own savings account. And the other side of that, so since those are general fund dollars, then we usually take the equivalent amount from the utility funds and the fleet and SASA, and that would be $375,000. The trouble with that is taking money from those funds is, as you can see, the debt coverage ratio on water is really tight. And so I would caveat that to say as long as it was not going to drive us down below that 1.2 debt coverage ratio, then we can make that recommendation. And I can write that into the budget resolution to use some language that's going to keep that fund safe. Or we can forego. That's a decision point for you. The other is something that I think is a little bit easier when I say that we prepay our UAL to save on interest. We've been taking that interest that we would have paid and making an additional discretionary payment to CalPERS for unfunded liability. And so we've been doing that for many, many years now. And I would recommend keep doing that. But of course, the other side of that is that you could utilize those funds in the general fund some other way. So that's something as well, or general fund and the water and wastewater funds. And then I'm also recommending that you do close the operating deficit of the general fund with the balance of the budget stabilization reserves, $5.5 million. There's a chance that we won't spend all the money we have that we budgeted, which is what we expect this year. And so whatever of those funds that the city does not end up utilizing for budget, we'll just roll and be able to use that in subsequent fiscal years. Okay, and then as I mentioned, funding of the Healthy Cities Reserve. Because we're technically in a deficit position, we're not going to have a surplus to fund the Healthy Cities Reserve with to bring it back up to 15%. So if we don't do anything, it'll be at 13% this fiscal year, and you can address it, come up with a plan to address it later. Or we can move general fund CIP dollars out of unallocated general fund CIP into the general operating budget and cover the reserve, bring the reserve back up to 15%. And then that just means that if you were to come up with an urgent project in your general fund capital improvement projects area, then you would have to look to some of the other discretionary funds to make a big project happen. So it doesn't, we don't see that very often, but at some point you might want to make a big change or make a big improvement to one of the facilities, general fund facilities, or you might want to use that discretionary cash. So to me, cash is fungible. Means it's all general fund. So if I move it from one of these other places, all it's doing is changing the purpose of those dollars. Right now, all the discretionary funds that I listed that are not the Healthy Cities Reserve have been given a purpose. And so by moving CIP dollars, I think those are the easiest dollars to move out. If you want to get that Healthy Cities Reserve back up to 15%, then I think those are the easiest dollars to move. And with that, we'd love to hear any feedback that you have for us at this time, so we can write a resolution that's due tomorrow.
No pressure. Real quick, do we have any comments from the public? Nothing. All right. Open for discussion, gentlemen.
I had one, Mayor. Chief, with the dog, the canine, did we, because the mayor and I were in discussions at the ad hoc about, I thought there was 2 canine that you were requesting, or you just were only going to do the one? So it is just the one? Because I know Sean and I had a discussion. Didn't we have a discussion about that? You said, can we go for the 2?
We specifically talked about it. I thought it was 2 as well.
Okay. Oh, is that?
Okay. Okay.
Is that,
I think we're,
because
well,
that,
if he's good, I'm good.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so,
All
all right.
right, yeah.
All right.
Next question I had was, come on, get back up here. Spencer, the 15% that we're shooting for, that equates to our ability to go out and get money, get loans, correct? I mean, is that in the equation of when they're looking at us?
Yes, I think that number gets pulled out because it's really the only designated reserve that we show on our books. But we do have this other discretionary funding, and we would be able to make a strong case or show a bond rating agency, which would be the ones that would be really looking at this closely, that we have the ability to do what we're asking to do. Of course, we wouldn't ask to finance anything that we really couldn't afford. We couldn't afford debt service payment on. So it would just be decisions on how to do that. Being at 15% is already pretty low across the state. But we've always known that the way we save for vehicles, for instance, is different than a lot of agencies save for vehicles. So a lot of agencies don't have that vehicle replacement fund, and that's something that's been built here over many years, just saving the money. Regardless of how effective the plan necessarily feels like it is, it's the money's, there is money there. We have a budget stabilization reserve that not all agencies have adopted, and so you can use that in a couple different ways, but only for pensions, but you have the ability to use that to offset, take some pressure off the general fund. So you have these other sources that you could utilize to satisfy a bond rating agency, but you do have a policy that says you're going to do your best to make it 15%. But if not, we need to kind of all agree on a plan to get it back to 15%. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank you and your staff for doing a great job on this, by the way. Thank you very much. And I participated last year. I want to thank the ad hoc for going out of the way to take so much time and get into the weeds on this, so thank you. The one question I had, you covered in the last slide, which was that pension stabilization fund, and thank you for covering that. What this tells me, though, is you mentioned the sales are flat, sales tax, but property tax is looking pretty healthy, and so what that tells me is a healthy housing market is a good thing. It's a very positive thing because that's how we pay our bills. But other than that, well done. Thank you.
Spencer, as always, thank you for everything you've done, you and your team and our department heads. Going back to your slide on the sales tax projections and where we're at, that's more of a concern at this point because, we've kind of projected them going up over the last several years, and I've been going, they're going to stay stable at best, go down. We're seeing that. We're looking at the economy right now. The only thing that's keeping sales tax propped up is the fact that inflation is just out of control. That's the only thing. You even alluded to it. The fact that gas is higher, that's propping it up right now. Cars are higher. That's what's propping it up. People are not spending what they have. They don't have the disposable income. What is our analyst projecting forward? Because you were projecting, I believe it was 1.4 increase in the budget for sales tax.
No, about 150,000. What I'm projecting.
Okay. There was a percent on another slide that I was referring to. So there you go. Budget increase 23-24 was 1.4. The next one's only 0.5. There we go. Okay. So that was my first question and concern. What is our analyst saying in that we're building in 0.5, but what are they projecting? And you know my opinion of their projections.
Yeah, so HDL is our consulting firm that we work with on this. They are consistently low for us. They're consistently low. And so I'm always just a hair higher than them. I think I've got us relatively flat, and they've got us, I think, just under, maybe 17.8 or so, 17,850, right around there. So they're just a little bit lower than I am.
So they're actually kind of consistent with us this time. A few years ago, they were saying that it was going to rise and go crazy, and we're not seeing it. So the other question, go forward to the next, I think it was the next slide, where you had the one with the revenues year over year. There you go. If we really look at what we've infused, we're watching a trend that our revenues have really flattened out, because if we take off the 6 million and the 5 million, we plateaued about, 55, 56 million, and it's stagnant right there. So, and then we've got a lot of increased cost coming in. Okay. So I wanted to point those out because I'm getting to things that we're talking about with the stabilization fund, the CIP money, the healthy cities. The 15%, is that based upon the 62 or 61 million, which is inflated because we injected 6 million? Or is it off our true revenue?
It's actually off our expenditures.
Okay, so it's off the expenditures.
Which is it's the same number, but off the expenditures.
Yeah, we didn't miss it by much. Okay. Then with that, going to how we do the UAL payment, and I believe you had the amount you were trying to pull from the enterprise funds, but concerned about the liquidity there and our ratios. Can we not fully pay that discretionary payment just out of that and basically give our enterprise funds, and they can give us an IOU for later? I'm concerned about those ratios because we're getting mighty close to 1.2.
Yeah, it would be a low. So all the money in the pension stabilization reserve is fund is general fund. general fund money. So yeah, we would have to do a do from kind of a loan to do that. That's certainly something on the table. It's an option.
Okay, I think it's something we probably need to just make sure it doesn't affect that ratio of the 1.2 going into. And that's something I could get behind, as well as bringing us up to the full 15%. Because looking forward, part of the things that we've had discussions on is we need to fix our roads. And we're going to be looking at, bond money at some point to possibly do that. And we need to have our ducks in a row, our house in order, and we need to look at the issuers of those and the agents to where they're looking at is giving us a good bond rating. And I think if we let it drop below that 15 as designated, we kind of go in with our arm tied behind our back. So we definitely need to move some things around to keep that up.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And obviously the other option is to not make an ADP this year, not make an additional discretionary payment this year. That's an option if that's the direction you wanted to go. We still keep the assets in the pension stabilization fund, which offsets the liability. And so we're in a similar position. The difference, though, by making the ADP is you're paying down a little principal on your house. So there is a distant future amount of savings there. But if you decided that this was a difficult fiscal year, and it's best to just to be status quo, like just no ADP, then that's an option.
Yeah, with the way the state is managing the money and their subpar returns, it would behoove us to make that because it's the time value of money for future. So, like I said, I'm in favor of that. You see the areas of concern that we got to maneuver around. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First to the department heads and their staff, thanks for the hard work on putting forth what I would consider to be a realistic budget. I know it's not easy to sit back and know what you would like to have and how that might enhance services, but dealing with the reality of the current budget scenario and the revenues and the expenditures. Second, to your staff, to the three of you and those who support you, having spent, a few years on the ad hoc committee, and all of us have had a turn in the bucket now, but being patient with us as we, pour through line by line through that and, ask the good questions. I think that combined with your professionalism, along with the city manager and the department heads, place us in a spot which is probably better than some, at least as I look up and down the state. There are quite a few municipalities that are really, really struggling. It's not that we're not struggling, but we're probably not struggling as much. The constraints of the Brown Act obviously keep us from, the five of us, from chit-chatting about certain things. And so as I look at your presentation, and thank you today for answering my questions as well, a few things stand out to me. And ever since I've been on the council, which I began in 2019, it's all about essential services. What are those things that government was established to take care of? Public safety, roads, water, and sewer. So when I look at the budget, and this is not to throw any shade on this ad hoc committee or any of the previous ones, it's always the measure I bounce it up against, which is what are we in this budget, what are we potentially funding that is not necessarily conducive to those essential services, especially in tough budget times. And I think that's even heightened when we are contemplating going out to the constituency for a revenue measure. So for me, it was kind of a deeper dive into some of those things that I think that we are taking a look at and continue to spend. So a couple things came to mind. Number one, were those agencies or those things that we we participate in. And two of those are the League of California Cities and SACOG. And so this is for my colleagues up here as well. On the League of California Cities, I'm wondering, again, our investment in that particular organization, I really wonder, are we getting an ROI? And so having the benefit of 16 almost 15 years of local government budget responsibility and another 13 years of private sector, I always look at ROI. And, you know, I think that's one of the things that all of us take a look at is, are we getting a return on our investment? I don't have any specifics on League of California Cities. I do have specifics on SACOG. Okay, we have a nice brand new bridge. We have a Bridge Street improvement. So our cooperation with that organization seems to be returning, you know, on our money. Unfortunately, and this came about in the last meeting when I spoke about GSEC, I do not see a return on investment. By their own admission, over the last 8 years, we have provided them with $217,000 worth of City of Yuba City tax revenue. And to date, and I could not get an answer from Mr. Broom on the dais last week about what that has done for us. I heard a lot about Bosch going into Germany or coming from Germany. I heard about the airport, but I never really heard anything about what they were doing for the City of Yuba City. So I look at the $27,000 that they are asking this year, and I think to myself, wow, okay. So we have a safer number of $52K that we're trying to capture. That's public safety, it's fire department. We have a $25,000 police canine. That's public safety that we are now having to fund additionally. We're talking about our own economic development person and increasing our expenditures there. And I can point to that effort and say, yeah, that's got some return on investment. We are seeing some things happening. So when it comes to these subscriptions or participations, some make sense, i.e. SACOG, and some to me I really question. And I think that it's fair for us to ask ourselves, you know, on a go-forward basis, do we really expect that? I think what I've heard is, well, let's give them another chance. We gave them 8 chances so far. How many more chances do you want to give them? I don't see it. If it was my money, I wouldn't invest it. It's your money out there in the listening audience. I don't want to invest it on your behalf. I may be the Lone Ranger on this, but nonetheless, I feel very compelled to bring that up. And I'm hoping that at least it would be considered as look, we've got fire, we've got police needs that are increasing our budget. Is this a more reasonable expenditure to take care of that? Doesn't mean that we always have to be away from GSEC, but it also means that show me. To date, and we brought it up 2 weeks ago, we brought up, hey, the Kmart property, almost 14 acres, still not on their site as of yesterday. You know, and the answer I got was, well, you need to tell us about that. What are we paying you for? I don't get it. So as far as you know, going forward with the budget, you guys have done a great job. I really don't have any other questions. I think that and I know it sounds de minimis, but nonetheless, as we go forward with a revenue measure, I want to stand in front of groups like I did today. And I want to be able to say, hey, look, we have trimmed the budget. There isn't any fluff here. The things that we're spending on behalf of you are for those essential services that you require as a citizen and that we want to deliver as a city council. So with that, I will close my comments. Again, I do. This isn't any disregard for the ad hoc committees. Nothing against you. It's just Councilman Mark Boomgarden representing District 2, telling you how I really feel about those expenditures. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Quick question, Spencer. Have we done any taken the time or had the time or even the ability to project? We have a lot of businesses coming into town, or several, as far as potential sales tax revenue from those businesses and also property tax from the few hundred homes that we're building.
I've not seen anything myself on that, and that's maybe an area where development services and finance teams should get together and see. Some of those feel like they take, from my perspective, feel like they take forever to come to fruition. But if there are more near-term programs that anyone on the council wants to know, or near-term builds that you want to know about, we could probably figure it out. So the consultant that we use, HDL, they represent cities all up and down the state. and they have a pretty good finger on the pulse of what businesses produce. Of course, you know, it's going to be maybe slightly different in Corte Madera than it is in Yuba City, but I think they can come up with a pretty good range and give us an estimate.
Hopefully it will be encouraging, because as Vice Mayor pointed out, we've been flat for 3 years, and revenues are not very steep, or excuse me, not revenues, expenditures are very steep curves, so it'd be nice to at least have an idea of hopefully how good it is versus how bad it's going to be, but if it's not too much trouble, I'd be interested in knowing those numbers, getting an estimate. Thank you. Anything else, gentlemen?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Baumgartner, I'm shoulder to shoulder with those two comments. So you are not the lone soldier.
You guys are looking for direction in a couple specific things, is that correct?
Yeah, going back to this end slide. These are probably the most pressing. Of course, if you had any other things you wanted to see in a resolution or in the budget that we bring back to you on June 18th, we can work on getting that in. But these are some of the decision points. Are we going to do an ADP? Do we want to take Councilmember Vice Mayor Shaw's recommendation and figure out what portion of the $375,000 comes from water, and look at the other funds and see if they're going to be okay? And do we loan the money out of the pension stabilization reserve, which is something we can figure out and make that happen? Do we want to do an ADP at all? Do we want to use the UAL prepayments savings to make an additional discretionary payment? Do we want to close a deficit with budget stabilization funds? And are we going to get that Healthy Cities Reserve up to 15% by transferring funds from the unallocated general fund CIP? Or are we going to let it be at 13%?
I don't mind starting out by saying I'm in favor of an ADP, always will be. Keeping the ratio at 1.2 and keeping the 50% for reserves. So, and this, we have other.
Well, through the mayor, I think that using the vice mayor's comments, I would hope that the budget maneuvers that we do provide us with the opportunity, should the revenue measure pass, should we put it on the ballot and should it pass, that we place ourselves in a position to best take advantage of those bonding opportunities at the best favorable rates. So I guess maybe I'm listening or hearing or hoping I might hear from you is those things, do any of those place us in a detrimental position when we look forward to a road bond or a fire station bond or what have you?
I think the Healthy Cities Reserve visibility is probably the only thing up there that is going to come close. It would require us, if we were to present, which we're still, before any bonding would happen related to a proposed transaction tax, we're still a few years out. So you have some time to get that back to 15%. Just every year that it's below 15%, it's a bigger and bigger lift to get it to 15%. And so I can't remember the exact number out right off, but this year's figure to do so. Yeah, I didn't write it down. We did figure it out for 1.3. One was 1.3 to get it back. So to 15%. So I think that's the only one that might have the visibility of those items, if that makes sense.
The 15% is a criteria for obtaining.
It's just something that we've said that we're going to do, and that's just a policy we have out there. And so a bond rating agency is going to look at our policies. They're going to want to see our budget policies and our debt policies, and they're going to want to know, well, why aren't you at 15%? So the key part to this is that a lot of the projects that are most likely to happen that get bonded are probably going to be more general fund pointing projects. And so that's the general fund reserve. That's the primary visible general fund reserve. And so I think, to Mark's point, that's...
They might not use the ADP as the fact that we do an ADP as an official criteria, but it sure looks good that we're conscientious of the issue for these folks, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the ADP we're sitting at about 4.6 million right now. If things were going like they were when we created sorry, I said ADP, but the pension stabilization reserve, if things were going in the same as when we created that reserve, then that would probably be 6 or 8 million by now. But it hasn't been. We've had a lot of obstacles, and this year is one of those obstacles. And so we can make the payment. We have room to make the payment. It still is going to show that we have a $4 million pension stabilization reserve, which I think still looks pretty good. When we were building it and we got to $4 million, we were happy with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess we're all, anybody else have any info?
Any non-nods?
You good with okay.
Thumb up, thumb.
All right. I can't take a formal vote. Neither attorney might get mad at me, so. You say no.
Okay.
Very stoic. I don't want to be against him.
All right. Thank you for that direction.
All right.
Team, get good notes. Are we're good with what's going on? Okay.
All right.
So next step, just so you in the audience know where we are, we're talking about you made reservations to staff, or recommendations to staff tonight. We're going to adopt on June 18th, and we have been doing a lot of pre-work.
Yeah.
Amarjeet's doing a lot of pre-work, and so we should be able to publish in July, fingers crossed. And so with that, I'm recommending just to take a couple minutes break while we change over the presentation, so Director Moody can talk about CIP.
All right.
It's the pleasure of the mayor.
You need about 5, 10?
No more.
No more than 5. All right. Here we go. 5-minute break. Ben, are you ready, sir? All right.
All right, whenever you guys are.
We're ready.
Okay, so tonight I have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the capital improvement budget. This is really the program as far as how the city handles our infrastructure needs, how we coordinate to maintain and improve our infrastructure across the city. And so real high level, we break it through categories as far as community services, general facilities, wastewater, water, public safety, streets and roads is how we've categorized those type of improvements. And then we get into the funding. And so the funding, there's a lot going on here on this slide, but this is where the money comes from. And so you have general fund, your sales tax, your property tax, your various fees. You have your Transportation Development Act, which is a streets and roads money. You have your streets and roads gas tax, and then you get your development impact fees. So when a house is built, they pay a portion towards your roads and your parks. You have water and wastewater that are enterprise funds, and then you get into at the bottom here. Mainly grants. It's federal grants, state grants, community development, block grant funds, and other miscellaneous fragment, small resources. And so this is the money that's coming in that we're programming into the 24-25 fiscal year. And so it's not a huge amount, but it's broken out by the fund and where it's coming from. Here's a graph just to give it a visual a little bit. The green is the carryover funds. And then the purple is what this fiscal year allocation request is. And so there's a lot of numbers on here. I could definitely dive into it. Some of the takeaways, here's your general fund. Here's your streets and roads money. Here's your development impact fees. And then you get into your water, wastewater, and these are your grants. So this is the money coming in. So a big chunk of the program is coming in from various grants. So project funding, and so this is where we take all the money from those different funding sources, and then we're putting them into projects. And then so just in general terms, we've taken that money and then we've broken it out by fund. $3 million into general, a big chunk of that. $2 million is from a grant for 442 B Street that I'll get into regarding environmental assessment. Your facilities, you go from millions to thousands. Community services, thousands. Public safety, thousands. And then you get into street and roads. These are these big dollar projects. They sound like a lot, $8 million, but it doesn't go very far, as we've talked. And then you get into water and wastewater. And same thing, we're programming similar to last year, but there's a lot of need out there, and keeping that within our funding ability. And so this is another visual by project type. And so this is where we allocate the money. So this is where the engineering team and where people are really focusing on spending money delivering projects. And so you look on this side, you got streets, water, wastewater. That is where we are spending the majority of the money. And then you get into here, it's a visual. You see facilities. There's needs. It's just that's what the general fund dollars are that are available to program those. The community services, public safety, in your general fund. So 24-25 project highlights. And so, this document, it's 100+ pages. There's a lot of projects with a lot of different information across the board as far as stormwater, various streets. And so what I have here tonight is basically where the teams are focusing for the category. So really of the money, of the staff, our ability to deliver projects, I'm highlighting some of the focus projects for this fiscal year. And so regarding general projects, so these are typically your straight general fund dollar projects that are across the city. You have 442 B Street. So the city was successful in acquiring a $2 million grant to do an environmental assessment on a piece of property behind the fountain. The intent is to take those dollars, move it towards cleanup to be remediated, and then to set up the entitlements so it's ready to develop. So it's moving it. So right now we have a piece of property that's not clean. It has some. It's dirty, I guess. It has some issues with contamination, and so it's to evaluate that and then move it forward. And so that's a push this year. The Fleet Master Plan. This is probably just a little bit of money. It's just seed money, to be realistic. But what's going on is there's a lot of needs with fleet. And so as the world in California turns to electric vehicles, as we get bigger fire trucks, as we get street sweepers that aren't fitting into our facilities, as the city grows, there is a real need for an evaluation of where am I going to put these electric vehicles? How am I going to charge them? What's the equipment that needs to be maintain them? And then, what type of bays and how many cars and how many people do we need to start working on when Beat 6 comes on board, or when another fire station or fire equipment comes on? How are we handling that in the equipment and putting some sort of plan together so we could systematically fund that? General Plan LEAP grant, that's really, it's really a carryover project. This is some money we're putting in. This is a grant money. We're allocating it to this year. So then that way we could help finalize, pay the bill, and move forward. Quick status on the general plan update. Doug and his team, they're working with a consultant. We're planning to bring that forward to the Planning Commission in July. For a recommendation to the City Council in August. So you'll see a lot of traction soon on that regarding the environmental document and then coming to the Commission and the City Council. ERP, I had to look this up because I couldn't remember the acronym, but it's Economic Resource Plan. Really, it's a comprehensive software. This is a big project that Spencer Finance and IT are working on to move forward, to upgrade and look into the future. I'm sure he could provide some details. I know they've identified a vendor as far as in scoped out the project needs for HR and for payroll. Definitely he could get into the weeds if there's any specifics, but it's a big project, a big undertaking, and they're working to continue that forward. Facilities, and so this is an ongoing need. So regarding facilities, we have a lot of buildings, we have a lot of aging equipment, and they have needs. And so it's everything from people getting stuck into elevators to roof leaks at the Madden House, to the city council chambers, HVAC units going out to the front doors at city council. We can't time them necessarily, but things happen and we have to be able to repair them to keep the doors open and keep people working in a safe environment and to keep working through. So there is a little bit of money going into these projects this year. So for facilities, we're specifically putting $275,000 into buildings and grounds. And that basically the intent for that is courtyard roof and in-wall gutter repairs, floor coating, wastewater treatment plant facility lab floor coating, lab roof repair, lab cabinet countertop replacement. Their workbench is needed repair, and the Madden House roof replacement for $60,000. So those together with some existing funding is the goal for this year to use that money. And then the Union Pacific Railroad property, there's a real push on with Public Works and with staff to try to bring a project forward for the railroad right away. And so with that, there's ongoing needs for attorneys, staff time, looking for grant possibilities. And so we wanted to put a little bit of money in there to give some flexibility on how we handle that. So when a ATP grant comes through the SACOG or through the state, there's usually some funding costs. There's some cost associated with that, with developing the grant application and various things so that we could try to leverage that money. So it ultimately turns into something that is multi-million dollars. Community service projects. So this is in regards to parks mainly. And so the Veterans Park, it's a small amount. I wanted to highlight it, the $20K, but it has to do with a new bronze plaque, putting some anti-graffiti stuff in place, and then also some lighting is my understanding from the description. The annual playground replacement fund, annually they're asking for $165,000. With the $165,000 this year, my understanding is $100,000 of it is set for Bogue Park replacement, and then $65,000 will go into the pot for next year's Hillcrest Park, which is a bigger value. So they're planning on $165,000 a year. They most likely won't use all of it for Bogue Road, but that would help offset the cost for next year's requirement. And then a little bit of the factor that's pending with this is there's a potential CDBG recommendation based on final council recommendation where it puts about $160,000 in there for Patriot Park. There was an application received from Community Services for Patriot Park improvements. Well installation and upgrade. So this is an ongoing project as far as where we try to put money into that each year to convert those sites. It's good for water conservation, and it's also good for the long term of the city. The projection is that every well that we put online for the park, we're saving about $15,000 to $20,000 annually. So ultimately, it pays off in the long run. Public safety projects. So this is a quick shot of the new training tower at Fire Station 4 and a recent remodel. And so these public safety projects, there's not a lot of money in these projects, but the big ones that are on there right now, when I say a lot of money, it's relative. So I apologize for that, but there's millions of dollars going on right now with the PD evidence storage building and the Fire Station number 2 remodel that was just approved by council and given direction to move forward. Those are really the big tasks that staff are working on this year. They're going to work to deliver those projects, keep them within budget, and work to coordinate around that. And then there's a little bit of money, fire station repair and renovation, $240,000. There's a list. If I get this right. So Station 1 bathrooms, Station 3 kitchen update, replace generator, and 4 bay doors, 2 at Station 1 and 2 at Station 2, the front doors. And then with the Fire Station number 4 training grounds, $35,000 was specifically to continue improvements for this comprehensive training to provide roof and forcible entry props to help with their training and to add to that the training grounds. Streets and roads. So, Old Thing Roads right now, as we've sat through many presentations. There's a huge need and not a lot of money. And so the focus for staff is Walton Avenue. This is a picture of Franklin Road. This was really just a reference to show new construction because this is the goal for Bogue Road. And this is where we want to get this year. And so with the project under designed and under construction. And so really, there's a laundry list of streets projects in there. There's probably 20 projects that are listed, from drainage improvements to various striping projects. But really where staff is focused this year is to deliver Walton Avenue, move that needle forward, Bogue Road improvements, get the design, start getting the contracts going. And then you have the Sutter Bike Gap closure that's been on the books. We're working to move that forward to construction. And then I listed here, it's a small amount of money, but it's a big deal lately with the Terrebonne Ad Hoc Traffic Committee and the recent accident on Highway 20 is this Highway 20 at El Margarita. There's also, so it's coordination with Caltrans. We have a couple of these small ones on the books as far as some improvements at Tharp Road north of 20. And then also we'll have to work with Caltrans about Highway 99 at Bogue Road to engage with Caltrans and start that design process. Here at Highway 20 specifically, I've heard from the council that due to the safety concerns, due to future development needs, they'd like us to look at moving the needle on what are some options for Highway 20 at with El Margarita. And so we met with Caltrans. Right now, their message is they don't feel that it's a safety issue and it's developer driven if improvements need to be happened. And so there's no project in the queue. There's no available funding at this moment, but there's definitely negotiations. And so to move something forward, it's really direction by city council to enter into a cooperative agreement and then start the process with Caltrans to go into a project management process where they go into a feasibility study and then they start evaluating different design options, and then you start working into the design process where then you have the opportunity then to start looking at, okay, what's the cost for this ultimate design, who's going to pay for what, and how we break it out. And so with that, we threw in $50,000 during the budget process. As of last Thursday, we met with Caltrans. They gave us a quote 50 to 100 until we actually give them the official go to get a quote for a deposit. And so what I'm recommending with this tonight is that this is listed in the CIP budget, that we move this forward. But what I'm looking for at a later date, I'll come back to City Council to say, hey, here's the quote that I have from Caltrans. Are you willing to enter into an agreement with them to move that forward? And then I'll have a real number from them, and then so we're not guessing what that number is going to be. Water CIP, this is a little bit of an old picture, but one of the big pushes this last year was to get the second groundwater well. It's just redundancy, provides that security for water. We had some grant funding, and so right now it's under construction. The well's in, the motor, the electrical equipment, the storage, the building, I guess, structure is under construction with plans for it to be done early this winter. Water projects, there's a lot of need, and it's really focusing in to what we have funding for and then prioritize it. So the water treatment plant basin improvements, this is literally the water as it comes through and settles, that there's some structure, there's time to look at that concrete to see if we need to have some coating, and need to make sure there's not any cracks or grouting, that we're starting to have some structural cracks in some certain spots. So that's a big deal for us. So we're looking into that. The Berry School water line, that's about to take off. We're going to start seeing some action with that here very soon. They're going to start, my understanding is, down towards Berry and work their way north. Kevin could probably give any more specifics on that. So we're coordinating with how that connection works. This ASR system, this was the grant that we got a few years back. It's really finalizing that design and then moving that forward. Spiva Avenue water line replacement, this is a small grant. It came to City Council the other day for request for entering into the grant and moving forward with a bid. We have an alum storage tank. This is one of the chemicals they use to help with the water treatment process. And then you have Richland water line. So it's a relatively small new water line connection, but it's a big deal down there based on flows, quality of pipe and access. So that's what's moving forward there. And wastewater, really, wastewater, it's all things diffuser. For me, it's what's going on is we're pushing that diffuser. We have an application in for the SRF loan. We qualify for that loan, low interest loan. Kevin and his team are working to finalize those permits. We're getting closer. We have a new permit that's coming from the state that we're working. They're working to finalize the exact terms of it and then to release it. But with that, there is this ongoing condition that we need to deliver this diffuser to have a stable location to put the effluent into the river system. And so with that, that's going to be the big project to move it forward. And then really it's meeting the new permit requirements, what those implementations could be, meeting all the new restrictions, requirements. And then really then it's just kind of doing some house cleaning with the available money I have, as far as there needs to be some work on the clarifiers. And there's just various ongoing plant and collection needs. One of the biggest collection projects that we're going to see next year, we're going to try to deliver is from Lift Station 2, so behind Sutter Butte's baseball field, to Market Street. The line is old, it's in bad shape, it needs to be lined. And so there's going to be some work there to bypass the baseball field, but at the same time repair that line. And so that's next year's mission. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or go into any specifics.
Any comment from the public before we go there? Okay. Council comments, questions?
Yes, through the mayor? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor. Thanks for that presentation, Ben. I've got a couple for you, and you got to help me out. Where's Patriot Park?
Patriot Park is off of Washington.
Queens.
Off of Washington, just past 99 on the south side.
By the 7-Eleven?
Yeah, across the street.
From the 7-Eleven.
Is that right?
Isn't that Queens?
Queens Avenue.
Queens, I'm sorry.
The red, white, and blue one by 7-Eleven.
And keep them straight.
Okay, all right, thank you, wow, okay, thank you. I think I should know that by now.
While we're on that subject, how much money do we have allocated for that? Or it was requested?
So for the CDBG right now, we're recommending 160,000. And so they could build a pretty nice park is what I'm hearing from the engineer for 160,000 for the equipment.
So CDBG. All right.
Did I get it right? But Ann can definitely.
Yeah, that's right. Patriot Park would be CDBG, and then Vogue Park would be the annual labor.
Okay. I'm trying to find you, what was it, 12.5 for that second trailer? Yeah. I don't know why it's weighed on me. We had to cut one of them out of there, but anyway. Go ahead. Trying to find, CDBG won't work, but,
So Ben, so $20,000 for the plaque at Veterans Park?
That's what's been budgeted and requested from Community Services Department.
Okay. So, I appreciate that ask. I'm wondering if.
Let me add to it just to make sure I get the scope right. It's bronze plaque, electrical lighting, vandalism to prevent, vandalism prevention for the monument, flag, and flagpole.
So, I appreciate the ask. I'm just wondering if that's good money going after bad, because the council brought up, staff brought up an idea that council was looking at with the idea of creating essentially another Veterans Park along the Bridge Street corridor. And it was my understanding that had some legs to it. So my question is, I'm kind of questioning whether or not that's just good money going after bad. That's my 2 cents. Let's go to all things Walton Avenue, right? I was gonna hit you with that. You said we're gonna really get that done 24, 25?
I'm hesitant. It's already summertime, right?
Right.
It's already summertime.
That is a no.
That is a no.
That's a hard no.
That's
Okay.
no.
So,
But we're working on the design. It's got to go through the Caltrans process, and most likely we have to phase a little right away.
Okay.
But Diana is correct. but we're gonna try like heck to get it out to bid.
So we're still waiting for the design to come through, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that 5.6 is going to be the of course, given.
That's the target number.
That's the target number.
That's the target
And that's
number.
with consideration with the grant that we have through SACOG that's at four, is it, Kevin, is it 4 million? Or 5? About 4.4, okay, all right. So keep our fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the design and the engineering team work together because we love everything gold plated. I love to have a signal with a roundabout with, decorative streetlights and sidewalks on both sides. But we see this is the budget number, this is what we have. And we put a sidewalk on one side and we work through some sort of a way to handle it to deliver to that project, something that's acceptable.
Right, okay. Did I hear you correctly in saying that Caltrans doesn't see an issue with El Margarita and 20?
That was what was relayed to us with the traffic staff based on their input for how they analyze roads as far as collision-based and volume.
Okay. And
They see the need based on development, future development.
Right, and then you also alluded to the possibility that when and if that day comes, who would be responsible for that? And then we're talking about potentially property owners, right, in that area?
I wish I had an exhibit, but it gets into the weeds. It really does because it's proposed to be part of our impact fee program. And so when development comes, there's a portion of that goes into the impact fee program. But then also who comes first or how do we handle that? But there'd be different players involved.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ben.
We had similar questions, so I'll just go. It occurred to me when we were going through this too, that the 20K, given what we're doing to Veterans Park, the improvements are great, but speaking from experience, you probably set your watch by how long the improvements are going to last. And I don't know what it would take to move a plaque or whatever we had intended to the new location, but that might be something we can consider revisiting for that.
I'm just worried that recently we found out that we were not successful with the Lamalfa grant. And so without funding programmed for that other area, really it's under weed abatement, for the next year with no plan.
So for the park, we have no funding for any type of park at all because of that, the Lamalfa grant. It's weed abatement.
Not for that location,
Okay.
unless it's reprioritized and put some money away for it.
I would almost consider putting the 20K on a shelf and waiting for when we do, because it's good. It's just going to be a mess, but probably a conversation for another time. But
Through the mayor,
yeah,
one option that you would have is to take that 20K to put it towards doing a preliminary architectural design for that park on the north side of Bridge Street, so you could evaluate where the park would be relocated. And then as we sell off the remaining surplus properties on the north side of Bridge Street, because we have a couple that we can sell, we could directly, through council's direction, put those funds towards development, in incremental phases of that vacant property.
I think that'd be a good alternative. The Veterans Park of all things, anybody we need to honor, that's not being very honorable right now. And we can't be all places all the time to prevent something from happening to it. Okay, so my 2 cents on that.
I know that's a great idea. I don't know as far as Spencer or Deanna to establish a CIP at the moment. Is that something we bring back? But we can work on that for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very pleased to see the Highway 20 El Margarita piece, especially in lieu of the recent accident. I talked with the city manager and heard the comments from Caltrans that this is not a dangerous intersection. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I responded to a fair amount of traffic accidents. And I'm afraid that if we don't do something there, and we know it's an issue, that we are obligated to spend some money to try to get this thing moving. However we can move it. The fact that it's basically an uncontrolled intersection, highly trafficked or traveled by high schoolers, To me, it's just, it's just waiting for another catastrophe. And I'd hate to be in a reaction mode, so I applaud you guys putting that on there. One thing that I would ask, because you talked about us having to do maintenance work on the Madden House. Is that correct?
Correct.
For the council, why are we holding this piece of property when we're disposing of all this other city property? Is it because, we have in kind for the Chamber of Commerce? I mean, to me, it's one of those things that begs a bit of taking a look at, is that, could we do that? Rather than, I'm not suggesting that you reappropriate the money right now, but I think, why do we want to be in the landlord business if we don't have to? We're not really getting rent. It's in kind for the chamber, and all we do is take care of the damn building that's ancient. When we had Parks and Rec there, it was a different story, but it's a tenant now. It's not us. So
I think, if my memory serves, I think we looked into that, but there's some restrictions on our ability to get rid of it. I'm not sure what the details were, though.
So Ben has been doing some research on that, because when that map was, when that land was divided, they did dedicate it to the city, and there was some strings attached to it. Ben, do you recall what the answer was?
There was definitely some CCRs as far as who's going to maintain it and how. I haven't dove into it to that level. We could definitely look into that. It was 150 pages thick, and there was definitely some criteria as far as when it was acquired and what level of maintenance had to be done initially. And so we'll get with the attorney, and I'll have a better answer I can get to everybody. But I mean, pros and cons, but there is definitely, we looked at that with the facility needs across the city. There's definitely needs there, everything from lead paint to dry rot to fencing that's there, but across. And so there is ongoing needs there.
Through the mayor? So it's not an asset, it's a liability. Can we give the thing back? I mean, if you give it back, you don't have to sell it. You don't have all the staff time working on trying to figure out if this thing's sellable and how we do it. Give it back.
I'm not sure that there's anybody to give it back to. It was the
Someone to
original.
give it back to, but there's someone there blocking it to sell it. That's ludicrous. Okay.
Sell it for $1.
My two cents on what Ben presented. I'm kind of in favor of taking the 20,000 and doing a study instead of just throwing it at something that's going to get vandalized again. Other than that, we've got a lot of needs. Thank you, Ben, for laying it all out. So I'm good with what's been presented tonight.
All right. Well, with that, I will bring back some information on the Madden House, and we'll make the adjustment for the
Through the mayor, you're not done yet, Mr. Moody.
Oh, okay. Okay.
First of all, you lost my support for Walton when you said roundabout. Both of us about fell out of our chairs.
I said gold plated, it's gold plated.
That's not gold plated. That's more like copper plated to put a roundabout in. Just listening at everything that we're talking about tonight, I mean, they're all good points, but the one thing that I feel that we really got to be careful of a council in doing is getting so far down in the weeds that we can't see the forest for the trees, because, and you guys have done, your teams have done all the work and get way down in the weeds, and we do as well. But when we're up here talking about a $12,000 trailer, and just follow me, guys, a $20,000 for this, a $20,000 for that, when we're dealing with over $100 million a year in a budget overall, we're starting to get really, really down low in things to where this should be taking a look at it, staff. And we also have to be real careful with things such as the Madden House and everything else, because that's an investment into our economic engine here in town, because that's the home to the Chamber of Commerce here in town. And we've got a partner and we support them. It's just like we partner with the EDC and we get certain things there, and SACOG and GSEC, all these other things. I just kind of watched this dive real deep tonight, and we've got to be real careful because we're going to end up stepping over dollars to pick up pennies in the long run. Is what we're going to end up doing. Not a problem with exploring more on the new Veterans Park that we want to do versus investing in something that it's not an if, it's just how many days it'll take before it's going to be vandalized. But my question that I have goes back to the 50K for El Margarita, okay? I drive it, I turned it, I had this discussion with Diana yesterday, and I know exactly what it's like, and I was floored as well that Caltrans says, oh, it's not a traffic issue. And I'm going, have you tried to go west and turn south? Depends on traffic, how soon you get across there. And then we saw what happened the other night. But that really wasn't a traffic issue because there's DUIs involved and everything else. So you take the alcohol or whatever was there out, it's not a traffic issue. But that's still not my point. I'm just rambling. The mayor's looking at me. We have a lot of development going on at El Margarita. You've got the church, car dealership, senior development, housing. Don't we have a lot of traffic studies and stuff going on out there right now? And should we not get all of them on the same page if we're looking at doing something with El Margarita? Because it's going to have a residual effect, and you're talking about putting 50K aside, but they could come back and ask for 100. They could come back and ask for 200. I'm just wondering, are we almost premature without getting those other people to the table? Is really where I'm trying to go.
I don't think so. I think the city really needs to take the lead and initiate the process because realistically, this is 4 years, $4 million. And it's just, and none of those developers there, and it's really taking the safety part of it out, is that this is going to be the next location that's a hindrance for development to the west. And so those properties along El Margarita, they're really, they all come back with a traffic study that says it needs a signal. But none of those developers have the time, the commitment, and $4 million to be that initial player to bring it in, and their projects aren't big enough to absorb that. And so really, I think this is where, the cities right now is focusing on Bogue Road and getting those improvements. But we need to move the needle, at least get the application going, at least get the design, and then start working through figuring out that cost and who's going to be a player. If the church is 12%, the car dealership is 5%, and then once we have a design and some costs with some real money, then we can start focusing. Then Caltrans, hey, this is part of the growth, or this is part of the safety control. How much can we leverage to bring them to the table to figure that out? But this is really, hey, nobody's going to take this initial step. Even though the development's coming, they want to rubber stamp their development, but it all hits the brakes when that signal's not going, and none of them have the, capacity at their level to move it forward. And so that's where I think it is a good idea. Hey, let's tackle this, not at a full-blown allocate $4 million, but let's get the application in, let's start the feasibility study, we'll start working through those processes.
Help me understand, because my understanding what Caltrans has said, and Ms. Langley, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't see it as a traffic light signal. It's too close. We were talking about this the other day. They have to be on board to put a traffic signal. So right now we're talking right in and right out, correct, is what we're after?
So the phase one would be evaluating right in, right out.
Okay.
Caltrans has been on board with the traffic signal. What they have a more difficult time with is if we were to propose an access opening on the north side.
Okay.
Because of spacing of intersections, full intersections access opening. But previously, when we've done traffic studies for projects proposed within that area, they have not been against a traffic signal at that location. It's just when you're talking about phased improvements, a right in, right out will get you a long ways for a long time from an operational standpoint. And in doing so, you may not need a traffic signal if the public's willing to accept that you cannot make left turns there.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we need to do something, but at the same time, I think if we invest this, we need to get those developers to the table, because there's like 4 of them that's got projects going, because we don't need, to be doing this and then go back to them in a year and go, your percentage is X and we need this extra money. I think we need to make sure that we're working collaboratively with them and we're not going rogue ourselves just to do this, unless we're going to pay for it. That would be my only question.
Yeah, I guess to clarify, it's really safety. We're trying to do the right in, right out. Ultimately, for development, it needs a signal. And so then it's how we work with Caltrans to get there, and then who pays for what. And so you have a church that wants to have a school, a brand new church. We're working with them to see if that phased approach will allow a right in, right out, but it might require the signal. And so then it's when do they come to the table? When do they have the money to bring it forward?
Right. That's it.
All right. Good idea for us to be involved in that. You know, I can understand why Caltrans is not excited about it because of the crass picture there, right? And so there's not a whole heck of a lot of stuff going on despite what happened the other day. Like David said, it's a little bit different situation, but the fact that we do foreshadow development coming in there and we have an entire school of brand new drivers a block away is kind of scary. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we literally talked to them last Thursday, and then this accident happened Sunday night. And so we'll definitely have a follow-up to see if there's some immediate stuff that we could go out and do with oversight signage, striping, make progress towards some sort of right in, right out. But we'll have a follow-up because they owe us that collision data that we'll talk about.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Anything else, gentlemen? All right, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7, future agenda items. Anybody have anything? Madden House, that's good. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, and now we're going to reports and communications. Following reports and communication items provided for council's information. No action can be taken on items under this section unless council agrees to include it on a subsequent agenda. City manager.
All right, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Spencer, Deanna, Amarjeet, Ethan, who's not here tonight, for all of their work on the budget. Thank the departments for all of their work on the budget. You know, it's easy to do this in a couple hours and know that it's 4 months in the making and a lot of behind the scenes. Also, thank you to the council ad hoc and to the city council for meeting with us and participating in this process. Separate from that, we do have 2 planning commission meetings this month in June with some good projects coming forward. So, a lot happening at the Franklin-Walton intersection, northwest corner, southwest corner. And then at the next meeting in next week, we have an assisted living facility, which we haven't seen in Yuba City for quite a while. So that's exciting. And with that, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was a fast report, but a lot was said. There sure is a lot going on, that's for sure. We'll go with Councilmember Boomgarden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had an opportunity to, I hope I got the dates right here, to witness the Shanghai Ben Park new equipment, and to the staff that was involved with that, a lot of excitement around that. Sure looks neat, and had a couple trips by that. It's really being used. Our parks get a lot of use. Also the Matna bocce ball. Well, I haven't seen anybody playing bocce ball yet. It's probably because it's 5 million degrees outside, so maybe that'll change when the weather changes. Had an opportunity to meet with Phil Trainer, who is not a stranger to these chambers, along with Supervisors Baines and Flores and Scott Powell, their economic development person. At Phil's request, this is for the community choice aggregation thing that we're going to hear about on the next council meeting. And what this has the potential to do is for Sutter County, the city of Yuba City, of course, to potentially have an option for electricity at a lower rate than what PG&E is charging. So it's kind of exciting to see how that works. I don't know how long it is. We'll know a lot more on June the 18th. But if you know Mr. Trainer, he's got a lot of energy and a lot of information, and he has promised to provide us with some of his expertise so we can ask the right questions. Continue to participate in revenue measure informational meetings. So to Chief Baker, Chief Alexander, Spencer, Diana, Ben, each one of those that I've attended has actually been received really well. And I think people are asking the right questions. I think we're giving them, good information for them to, better understand what may be coming forward to them in November. Last night, as your representative to the BO Military Liaison Committee, I had an opportunity to visit with 4-star General Ken Wilsbach, who is the guy in charge of Air Combat Command, and some of his staff. And you know, in reality, it's all about the efforts locally to try to maintain, you know, Beale as a viable base. What can we do as a city to support that? A little bit about, you know, the threats that they see, China, and just, you know, continue to show those folks who are decision makers in the Air Force that Yuba City and the surrounding area does value the $1.2 or $3 billion that they drive into the local economy. With that, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to thank staff for doing such a great job over there at the Shanghai Bend ribbon cutting. It's being really utilized, so thank you on that. Attended with the mayor, the Bridgefield Post-Acute Ribbon Cutting, which is a facility over on Live Oak Boulevard. Attended a Grateful Nation with the mayor, and if you've never attended that before, it's certainly worth your time. They do an amazing job to celebrate our nation and the folks that fought and died for it. I also attended the Punjab Festival over at the fairgrounds. It's held once a year. They had a really good turnout for that. Once again, bocce ball court, great job. You guys are doing pretty good on that stuff. I was invited to be commencement speaker for the Sutter County Superintendent of Schools adult ed graduation held at, the old bowling alley. What's that place called? Adventure Church. They had 55 graduates that are eager to enter the workforce, and that was certainly my honor to participate in that. And then lastly, I was invited to sit at the Fiscal table at the stand-down dinner, this was the 25th year for that. And man, like 1,200 people in that place. Had a huge turnout in support of the stand-down. And that's my report.
Very good. Mr. Pasquale.
Thank you, Mayor. Attended the stand down with my colleagues at a table. I talked to Supervisor McKelly yesterday at a meeting, and he said that they had a great return on their dollar. He was astounded at how much money they generated, something like $60,000 for the stand down for the veterans, for the community. So that was really great to hear. Went to my North Sac Valley Integrated Regional Water Management meeting yesterday, and our groundwater is looking good. A lot of good things going on with trying to mitigate the loss of water and as such in this state, in the North State. So, and I was really wondering, why I travel all the way over to Willows, but once you get there and you hear what's going on and the efforts that they make to make us viable and retain our resources, it's worth my trip going to Willows. I was invited to the Hard Rock for Yuba College. Had a presentation of they're putting a capital improvement push forward, and my colleague, Mr. Mark Boomgarden, was one of the speakers and gave his perception of what Yuba College had done for him and the community. And I know that if you've been here any length of time, that college has made a difference in your life, whether it was a fireman that showed up that went there, or your accountant that went there, or it's a really great resource for our community, and we need to get behind it. It's ailing, and they need some real help. Also went to my Air Quality Control Board meeting. We had a presentation from one of the council members from Sacramento that's on the Air Quality State Board, and biomass is huge, and they're going to start pushing that agenda, and they're going to try to bring more and more of that forward as an alternative to either wind or solar. Bocce balls, great facility. That park gets a lot of use. I go by it every day, and there's tons of people there. I haven't seen any players yet, other than I think before it was dedicated, I saw some people out there before it got hot. I just like to end my report with, we lost another one of our citizens that's been a huge since it turned to, the gold rush days, is the Chime family lost Hyman. A great man. They've got a going business, been a huge part of this community, and I just wanted to mention that we did lose Mr. Hyman Chime. And with that, I'll close my report.
All right. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to be brief here. Attended most of everything that we talked about up here, from the stand down to the dinner with the general last night, to the park equipment, which missed out as a kid because they were never that big when I was a kid. Pretty awesome. Did miss the bocce ball courts because I was in a meeting with the ones that needed to be in the meeting for the Sikh Festival and Parade coming up in the fall. For the council to know where we're at, we're on track with that. The mayor and I had met with the temple president a few weeks ago, presented them with I think a list of about 18 items that needed to be addressed this year. Everything from traffic and parking to safety to you name it was on there. They are on track per them to have everything really turned into us here by the end of this month and keep things moving forward. So we have more meetings ahead. The mayor and myself are meeting regularly with the temple president, and then we're also setting in on the tactical meetings. And chiefs, you guys are doing a great job, by the way, on that. So the end product, hopefully, is we have a very safe event for our community, and we solve some of the issues that we've had over the years, because this thing just keeps growing. Also, the RWMA, we've had multiple meetings on that. As you know, we're in the process of finding a new executive director and a permanent home. We have approved to enter into a contract with an organization called R3, which will serve as the interim executive director as a consultant and make sure we keep the train on the tracks more or less while we go out for a search for an executive director. And the council should know the firm that we're using because it's MRG. So we're going to use Shirley and them to research and help us find a new executive director. And a Grateful Nation, I had the honor of presenting on behalf of the council to Dave Reaver, Purple Heart recipient. We're a Purple Heart town. Thank you, Mr. Kirchner, for helping walk that through. It meant a lot to him, and he said to bring back thank yous to the council and the mayor because he goes all around the world to help people deal with the PTSD and the stress of battle and being wounded and everything. That's what our military, they send him all over. And for him to come here for 20 years and be recognized, he had no knowledge of it, and it was a surprise at the end. He said it really meant an awful lot to him, so I pass that along. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You guys already hit all my stuff too. Grateful Nation Remembers continues to be a phenomenal program. What a privilege and an honor it is to have something like that of that caliber here in Yuba City. If those of you have not been to it, I'd highly recommend it. Bring Kleenex, that's for sure. I was asked to speak to the leadership class, fourth graders at Lincoln Elementary School. So that was very fun and interesting. I think they thought I was the president and wanted to ask where my bodyguard was. I don't know. Maybe they know my ex-wife. I'm not sure. But I did happen to see somebody play at the bocce ball courts a couple times, so that was nice to see that happening. And I also attended the grand opening / ribbon cutting for the newest facility on Plymouth Street, the Hooligans, I'm not sure what it's called, Bar and Irish Pub. So they really are doing it right. It's a really nice place. It was definitely probably the most heavily attended ribbon cutting I think I've ever been to. It was really nice and very festive and positive, and the food's really good too. So there we go. Unless there's anything further, I also want to thank you guys, staff and everybody, for all the obvious hard work you put into this. Hopefully we weren't too much of a burden for you and adding too much to your plate, but a great job as always. So thank you very much. That, you all have a great rest of your night.